Ladies and gentlemen, today is a very special day. I have the privilege of building my beautiful wife her ultimate dream PC that's gonna power her ultimate dream setup. As most of you guys know, I recently finished my ultimate dream setup, and at the end of the series, I said that I was gonna start on my wife's setup. Well, this is the very first step in that dream setup journey. I have to build a PC first before I can start on the setup, because this will also be mounted on the wall, just like how mine is. I haven't been this excited since Big Red version 4, you guys. Okay, so let's not waste any more time and get started right after this. So you just build a brand new shiny PC and you're greeted with this nasty notification on the bottom right corner of your screen. Well, instead of going out there and paying full price for a Windows key, you guys can actually get one for less than $15. That's right, you guys can get a Windows 10 Pro CD key for less than $15 by visiting yourcdkey.com or by clicking my link below and using my code TS20 for that extra 20% off. They also sell Windows 11 and Microsoft Office keys, and the same discount code applies. Now, once you get your CD key, all you have to do is go into the activation settings on Windows and put in the new key and watch the watermark disappear. So being the wife of TechSource certainly has its own perks, like having access to high-end hardware. I'm definitely not going to cheap out on her system because she deserves the best. My wife does a lot around the house. She basically holds down the fort with the two kiddos while I'm over here in my office making videos for you guys. So that is why I'm throwing in the i9 13900K. It's not only great for gaming, but also multi-threaded applications. It's going to be extremely useful when she starts shooting her vlogs again, because she edits all her videos, believe it or not. So the extra 8 efficient cores and 32 threads are gonna come in handy. The motherboard I was supposed to go with was the Asus Strix Z790A, but when I got that in, I noticed it's only for the DDR4 platform. So because of it, I had to put the entire project on hold because I didn't like any other Z7090 white motherboards out there at the time. The ASRock Taichi actually looks really nice with the marble look, but it is an ASRock motherboard at the end of the day. No hate on the brand, I just don't like their BIOS and their RGB software. Which means the MSI MPG Edge was the only other option, and I also hate their software as well. But then, something magical happened. The PC gods heard my cry, and Asus released their Maximus Z790 Apex motherboard. The holy grail of all Z790 boards. Just look at how beautiful this looks with the silver heatsinks, the M.2 shield, and even the PCB is in white. No other motherboard made that commitment. This makes me so happy. The board is packed to the teeth with all the bells and whistles you can expect from a high-end motherboard. A 24 power stage design, PCI Gen 5 support for both x16 PCI slots, tons of connectivity, and of course, DDR5 memory support. The only downside to this board is that you only get 2 DIMM slots, which isn't the end of the world. I mean, we're still able to toss in a 32GB kit running at 6200 megahertz. The Apex actually supports up to 7800 megahertz, which is absolutely nuts. DDR5 memory is only getting faster, so it's nice to know we are future-proofing this build for several years. Corsair currently doesn't have a 64GB kit on their Vengeance RGB sticks. That's why I'm sticking with 32 now, but if they do come up with a 64 kit on their white sticks, I will upgrade this system as soon as possible. Okay, before I continue with the build, let's just address the elephant in the room, okay? I know some of you guys probably already commented something down below. I know the wall is horrendous, okay? Because it's not complete. My peanut-sized brain measured it incorrectly and I didn't order enough panels, so it's about 1/3 complete. This entire wall is supposed to have these hexagon panels, so I apologize if your eyes are bleeding. You're just gonna have to deal with it until the rest of the panels come in, which is in 2 days. So I apologize. All right, so since her PC is also gonna be mounted on the wall right across from mine, my options were very limited on what case I can go with. And out of those limited options, unfortunately, there was nothing that really stood out to me. I know I wanted a case that looks very similar to mine, but also different. It is gonna be in the same exact room, so I want both setups and both PCs to kind of complement each other. So similarities, but also different. Then it became clear to me that the only choice was to go back to the company that made my case and see if they made any other cases. And to my surprise, they do. They have a different version of my case, and it's called the Tower of Doom. Shout out to Kenny, by the way, from my Discord server, who originally reminded me that this case exists. It's got a very similar layout to mine, however the components are in a different location. I knew this would be the perfect case for her setup, but I do have one other case under my radar. This one is currently made by someone on Etsy, and when I reached out to buy it, he told me that he was willing to send it over for free since he was a fan of the channel. The case is smaller, but it's got support for dual radiators, and I just like how compact it is compared to the Tower of Doom. So I'm gonna compare these two cases in person when it gets here next week to ultimately decide what case I'm gonna go with, but in the meantime, I'm going to continue building in the Tower of Doom. Funny thing is, they actually sent me the wrong color. They sent me a black one instead of the white, but that didn't stop your boy Source Tech. So I did what I had to do. I painted this bad boy last night. It came out looking beautiful, and it's actually dried up so I can continue building in it. So before I install the motherboard, actually, I want to hook up our CPU block. I'm going with the Corsair XT7 RGB Pro yet again. It does support LGA 1700 sockets, so that's good. I'm gonna try and stick to the Hydro X series for this entire loop, just for consistency. I'm also gonna be going with Corsair fans, so that way I can sync all the lights together using the IQ software. I just realized this. Asus, what the hell were you guys thinking? Why did you put these ancient connectors for the mouse and keyboard on such a high-end motherboard? I must be missing something. They could have used that spot for a couple more USB 3s. That's so crazy. Oh yeah, spread those cheeks for me, baby. And by cheeks, I mean thermal paste. I don't know if I'm gonna keep the CPU block in this orientation. I will figure out how I wanna position it when I do the tube runs, but for now, I'll keep it in this position. All right, let's pop this bad boy on here. Now that I think of it, I don't think I ever told you guys the story of how I met my wife. Since I'm building her a PC, I feel like it's fitting to give you guys a story. It's a very long story actually, but I'll give you the condensed version of it all, just so I don't bore anybody to death. So I was in a very long relationship, 4 years, with my ex. After we broke up, I was exhausted of dating. I tried dating for 6 months or so, and I knew I didn't want to waste my life anymore, essentially. Like, when you break up with someone, especially when you're with that person for years, you waste your entire life. You waste those many years of your life. And I knew I did not want to go through that again, and ultimately decided to find an Armenian wife. But not an Armenian girl from here in America, an Armenian from Armenia. There's a big difference. Armenians from Armenia are raised, or I should say most of them, are raised with a pure heart. They're raised very traditional, and they only have one partner. So I knew if I was gonna date again, especially marry, I gotta do it right. And I gotta marry the perfect girl. And only she exists in Armenia. In my mind, that's how I was thinking. So the biggest problem was, how the hell am I gonna find the perfect Armenian girl from Armenia? It's not like there was some app or a website I can go and basically pick someone. So luckily, my aunt actually knew a family over there. And that family had a daughter. I think she was like 21 years old at the time. Oh, you know what? We didn't install storage real quick. Let's install storage. I'm gonna give my wife an 8 terabyte M.2 SSD. This is gonna be plenty for the operating system and all the applications and games that she's going to install on here. Pop this in real quick. So she hooked me up with her Facebook, and we started talking a little bit. At first, there was nothing really interesting about her. I'm gonna be honest. Like, there was nothing exciting. I wasn't like dying to meet her or anything. So I kind of brushed it off for a while. And I decided to plan a trip to Armenia because I haven't been there in such a long time. I think I was like 5 years old when we all moved here to the United States. So I planned the trip to Armenia with my mom. This was back in June of 2018. So we landed in Armenia, and the very next day we visited her family. And of course she was there. It's kind of tradition. If you're really interested in someone's daughter, you have to visit the family, you have to meet the family. It's completely backwards to how Americans do here in the United States. But I'm gonna be honest with you guys. It was a bit awkward for me. There was really not much to talk about. The conversations were very stale, but I kind of understood because at the end of the day, it was Armenia. You know, there was not much to do in Armenia, so there's not much to talk about in the first place. We couldn't connect for some reason. Don't get me wrong, she's beautiful. I absolutely loved how she looked, but if I'm gonna date someone or be with someone, is it's gonna take more than just the physical appearance, right? Like we have to be on the same wavelength. And unfortunately, that didn't happen on the first visit. And I kind of left her house thinking I'm never gonna speak to her ever again. And she felt the same way. She thought I was equally as boring, by the way. All right, got the motherboard hooked up on the case. I do wanna install the power supply next, which goes over here on this side of the case. Obviously the power supply is gonna be visible because it is an open air case. So it makes sense to go with a white power supply. So that is why we're going with the Phanteks Amp 1000 White Edition. If you guys remember, I actually painted the Corsair power supply for Big Red version 4. And as much as I like painting power supplies, you know, there's still a chance that something can go wrong. And I'd much rather have the power supply come in the actual color it's supposed to for the build. So that's why this is a perfect choice. I will be plugging in the stock white cables just for now, but I will be ordering custom cables for this build for part 2. So yeah, we left her place thinking I'm never gonna see her, I'm never gonna speak to her ever again, and I was completely fine with that. I was completely content with my decision. I just really wanted to enjoy the rest of my Armenia trip, which was the main reason why I booked the trip in the first place. But my mom absolutely fell in love with her. She was like, she's gonna be the perfect wife for you, she's gonna be the perfect mom for your kids, you can't let her get away. I'm like, Mom, you've met her for like 3 hours, how the hell do you know this? She's like, it's my intuition, I know a good girl when I see one. I'm like, forget about it, I'm not gonna see her, I don't wanna talk to her anymore, please, just enjoy the trip. So the very next day, we had a very fun trip planned to visit a very beautiful and scenic resort in Armenia called Lucitor. And guess who shows up last minute to join us? That's right, my wife. Apparently, the night before, my mom called her mom and begged her to send my wife to come with us to our trip. She didn't want to come, and I had no idea that she was basically forced to come by her mom. So yeah, she joined us in the next 3 days going to Lucitor. It was a very awkward 3-hour drive to the resort. Let me just tell you guys that. I'm putting the freaking power supply wrong, by the way. Let's flip this around. Again, the conversations were still, there was not much to talk about. She was in the back seat while I was sitting on the passenger side in the front. So yeah, it was definitely not a pleasant trip there, that's for sure. Oh yeah, this looks so much nicer, you guys. It looks like the power supply is a part of the build. It's such a nice change not having to paint power supply for once. Okay, I do want to take this time and install our radiator with the fans. We do have a slot over here to install up to a 360mm radiator, so I'm going to take advantage of that. That is actually the big difference between this case and my current case. This one only supports one 360mm rad, one distro plate, and one pump, whereas my case has 2 of each. It is an open air case, so I really don't think it's going to be a big deal sticking with a single rad as opposed to 2. And I don't think it's going to affect thermals as much. So, especially considering the distro plate is extremely thick. Like this is a chonker. If you look at it from the side, this is probably twice the thickness of my current distro plate, even though I have 2. So I'm hoping the distro plate here actually helps a little bit with the heat dissipation. But we shall check temps, of course, once the entire build is done in part 2. So anyways, we were stuck there for 3 days, so I was kind of forced to hang out with her, and she was forced to hang out with me, regardless if we liked it or not. There was nobody there. We were like the only family, and the resort was really nice, actually. A lot of activities to do. There's bike riding, there's a hiking trail, there's a basketball court, an arcade. There's even a pond where I caught my first fish, which was pretty cool. So anyways, as we're exploring the place, we came across this dormant arcade room. Nothing in there was working except this air hockey table. And it was barely working, like the air wasn't pushing the puck as smoothly as it's supposed to. But your boy Source from MedTech decided to make a move, since we're like the only ones there. So I was like, if I win the first game, you get to kiss me on the cheek. So sure enough, I destroyed her, 7-0, and I got what was rightfully deserved, a kiss on the cheek. And I don't know exactly what happened, but that kiss changed everything. It was, even till now, we refer to that kiss as the magical kiss. It somehow connected us. in a way where I can't explain in words. It connected us almost spiritually, I want to say. I've never felt anything like that in my life, and I've had plenty of kisses, let me tell you. This was something special. So after that kiss, we just kind of became really close to one another. We were holding hands, we were hugging, we were talking more. It changed so much, which is crazy to even say. So needless to say, those 3 days at the resort were the best time I've ever had in Armenia. So after we got back from the resort, we just started hanging out a lot more. We're talking with each other every single day. We're going on dates every single day. And I got to know her on a completely different level, and same thing with her. So fast forward to the end of the trip, it is time for me to leave. We go to the airport, we say our goodbyes, we hug each other, and she starts to cry. She says she doesn't want to leave me, that she's in love, and I was holding back every inch of my tears as well, because I felt the same. And as soon as she left, went into the taxi, I turned around and I just bawled. I bawled my freaking eyes out, because at that point, I loved her. I didn't want to spend another day without her. So I went back home the very next day. I reached out to an immigration office and I filed for a K-1 visa so that I can bring her here in America and marry her. So after I filed for the K-1 visa, it was just a waiting game at that point. We had to wait for the embassy in Armenia to call her in for an interview. And once she passes the interview, that's when she can come here with a 90-day visa. And I had 90 days to basically marry her. So while we were waiting, I was basically talking to her every single day on Facebook. And I even made another trip to Armenia the following year, March 2019, and we did our engagement party at that time. Oh, by the way, we're gonna be installing the Strix RTX 4090 in here. I'll be taking this apart and putting a water block on it, obviously, for the final build. But I'm gonna hook this up on here so that we can measure and see what the length is gonna be for the custom cables. That, and also we gotta make sure that all the components are working, of course. Actually, first, let's install our riser cable first from Lee & Lee, because we're gonna need to hook up the graphics card to it. So anyways, fast forward, it's September 2019. She gets called by the embassy for an interview, and sure enough, she passes it. And she comes to America the following week. And then we get married November 20th. So about 3 months later. Oh my God. Look how close it is to the pump. I did not even think to check. Oh my God, that would have sucked so bad. Actually, I don't think it would have mattered anyways, because I was gonna take apart this graphics card anyways and put a block on it. And the actual PCB of the GPU is much shorter than the card itself, so yeah, wasn't gonna run into any issues anyways. But still, I'm glad we can avoid that. Oh, check out this big brain movie, guys. Check this out. I'm gonna pull in the excess riser cable from the back through this hole. Oh, look at that. That actually works out so much better. It's beautiful. Oh, that is magical. Let's tighten this bad boy. So yeah, fast forward 4 years to the current day. We have 2 beautiful daughters, and I couldn't be more luckier. I somehow managed to find my soulmate halfway across the world. You know, I never used to believe in soulmates. I thought that was all just a bunch of hocus pocus, but they exist, you guys. They freaking exist. You just have to be lucky and fortunate enough to find yours. Oh man, this build is looking so freaking good. I am actually jealous. I'm gonna be installing a Lee & Lee 24-pin Strimmer V2s when I get those in. And a little birdie told me they're actually working on a special cable for the 40 series cards too. So that's coming in a few weeks. I'll be able to upgrade those cables as well. And the rest of the cables will be custom cables from CableMod. So yeah, really looking forward to part 2, you guys. And so should you. Make sure you guys have notifications enabled if you don't want to miss it. All right, so that's all I got for part 1 of building my wife for ultimate dream PC. If you guys enjoyed the video or enjoyed the commentary, let me know by tossing a like. I'm trying different things here, obviously, as opposed to just talking about PC parts. But yeah, I'm super excited for part 2, which is the finale. Make sure you guys are subscribed so you don't miss out. I'll drop a link to all the parts I used in this build below, along with the case, which you guys can pick up here in the US as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys very soon in the next one.